My name is Ray Warhola, and I am the chairman of SOPA, which is the Society of Publishers in Asia. In behalf of the SOPA board and our 39 member organizations, I'd like to thank you for coming here today and welcome you to the Media Insiders Breakfast that will address developing digital trends and the ongoing media transformation. SOPA is an active organization whose commitment to excellence is evidenced in a range of initiatives. Founded in 1982 as a not-for-profit association, the Society of Publishers in Asia serves to recognize and celebrate excellence in journalism. We bolster freedom of the press, and we share best practices that mutually support and benefit the publishing industry. Today, 33 years later, SOPA continues to actively affirm these values. SOPA also embraces an ongoing commitment to encourage and develop literacy skills in underserved Asian children. Earlier this year, in partnership with Bring Me a Book Foundation, the SOPA board rededicated a library in Yuen Long that we first established in 2012, providing a fresh supply of new English and Chinese language books. In October, 2 months ago, SOPA joined with Hands on Hong Kong, and together we raised funds to support volunteer programs that assist children with special needs. As the media business is a people business, we tend to enjoy each other's company, and we look for fun ways to get together. So the Christmas annual Christmas party will be held next Thursday, December 10th, at Orange Peel, near Lang Kwai Fong, and we invite you all to join us. 7 o'clock, Christine, it starts? 7:30 at Orange Peel, December 10th, Thursday. Please plan to join us, it'll be fun. Before we get started with this morning's Media Insider program, I'd like to thank Google for serving as our host sponsor. Cynthia, thank you. Thank you very much. Would you please join me in welcoming Ksenia and Google have also offered very graciously to provide a tour of these facilities for anybody who's interested. If you are, after this program, please just stick around, stay in this room, and that tour will be conducted. I'd also like to make you aware that Google and SOPA are partnering to support a hackathon to be held with the Journalism and Media Studies Center, JMSC, at HKU. Also joining is the Global Editors Network, GEN, and the AP. This will take place tomorrow and Saturday, December 4th and 5th at HKU, and teams from leading media outlets in Hong Kong and across Asia will participate, putting together innovative video news prototypes, and all are invited to come, and we hope you do. That'll be at HKU. And it is now my pleasure to introduce our moderator for this morning's panel, Mr. Matt Eaton. Matt is group editor of Marketing Magazine. Matt is a native of Australia who began his career more than 10 years ago with Pacific Area Newspaper Publishing in Sydney. He subsequently joined Marketing Magazine in Hong Kong in 2007. Matt assumed an expanded role.
It's not that long.
Feels long.
8 years.
Matt assumed an expanded role as group editor in 2011, overseeing the marketing brand across all offices and editions and across all print, online, and social platforms. In addition, Matt is also the respected host of such events as the Luxury Marketing Summit and the Agency of the Year Awards. We're especially delighted to have him with us today. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to our moderator, Matt Eaton.
Okay, that's lovely. Thank you very much, Ray. Okay, so I think, do we need this, or that's okay?
I don't think it's on.
Okay.
It's on.
It's on?
Yes, it's on.
All right, cool. So this morning, I'd just like to say thanks to everyone for coming. I know it's a very busy time of the year for everyone as we kind of get closer to Christmas, so that's also very exciting. So we're here to talk today about what's next with media in the world of digital and programmatic advertising, the role of data in connecting deeper and more engagement with our audiences, And also some of the new tools that are going to be available or already are available to publishers. Henry will pick your brain about that in a minute. We were just in here last week for the Google News Lab with the Journalists Association, and there's some amazing tools coming out, so very excited to hear about these things. But more than that, we're going to be looking at how the business models of media are expanding alongside all these changes, and how clients are changing the way that they interact with media, and looking to expand, some of the advertising services that they do. So, joining us today, we have Henry Hung, who is Director of Partner Relationships at Google. He's based in Beijing, but he's come all the way down here for us today. Thank you, Henry. Nicola, who's Channel Planning Director and Head of Cathay Pacific, Global Media at Universal McCann, or UM, we call them now. And also Mo Chung, who is VP of Sales at Apple Daily and Next Media, and now a digital company.
Yeah,
Yes. All right, great. So we have a lot to talk about there. So the idea of the panel this morning is we'll just have a bit of a chat with these guys, and I think we'll try and open it up for some questions, because a good panel is one which has lots of interaction. But I thought maybe just to give a bit of context about why we're here today and these panelists, because it's quite a kind of diverse panel, might just give a bit of a quick sort of chance for you guys to introduce yourself and just kind of explain, how you arrived on the panel here today and what your role is for you. Maybe Henry, we can start.
Sure. So, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So, well, I'm based in Beijing, but actually I'm originally from Hong Kong. So, thanks for the event. I have the opportunity to come back to Hong Kong more often. I'm responsible for strategic policy for Google. So basically what we do is, if you look at user relationship externally, we have user, we have advertiser and publishers, right? So my organization is basically focused on establish the strategic partnership with all the publishers, and not only just on monetization, but also look across explore area that we can help publishers to win in the whole selling cycle, from creating content, how to engage the users more, and how to reach the right audience, and so on and so forth. So these are all the things that we work across the different boards. So as Matt mentioned, so we have some tools that basically can help. So I would love to introduce more later on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, my name is Mo. Yeah, my name is Mo. So I'm representing Next Digital, AKA Next Media Group. So I joined the company 3 years ago, pretty much. Look after this advertising, digital advertising of Apple Daily. And then recently I got the chance to also look after the Apple Daily print business. So basically the Apple Daily sales operations will be the solutions. I think the company has made a bold move this year, because we realize that it's really a time for us to tell everyone that it's the era of digital age. So publication has to change, and that's why we make this such a big move, changing the moment. So
Excellent, thank you.
Hi, I'm Nicola. I work on the Cathay account at UM. So my remit, I've been there for about 1.5 years now. I've been in Asia for 4 years, or Hong Kong for 4 years. My remit covers global media, so covering their global budget. Also the local planning and buying falls under my remit. And then we also inform global strategy, which the 34 countries feed into.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so I thought maybe a good place to get started, just to kind of throw some big picture stuff out there, was maybe Henry, because I think it's quite appropriate that we're here in Google today, because the relationship that Google has had with media in the past has been somewhat controversial, with all those rivers of gold and the classified advertising moving online, and it's really sort of but that relationship now is quite different, and you guys are playing a much sort of deeper role with publishers now. Can you just give us a bit of a sense, about how that relationship works today, and what really sort of you're doing with media companies today?
Sure. I think, as I mentioned before, right, if you look at the whole ecosystem, we're talking about user, advertiser, and publishers, right? So publisher is a very important piece of the whole ecosystem. So our effort is really how we can leverage the strategic partnership with particularly in my team. Our focus is really on how we can work more closely with the publishers to promote a much more sustainable development of the ecosystem. So it's definitely very important, and we have existing partnership with some of the major publishers in the region. I'm responsible for Greater China, so we also have a lot of the relationship with partnership with some of the news media in the region too. So as I mentioned, I think monetization is definitely one of the very obvious one that we are working with the publishers. But beyond that, actually, if you look at
monetize the digital services that they have.
Right. So for the digital advertising. So apart from that, actually, if you look at the whole sales cycle of most of the publishers facing today, right? So it all starts with like how to create the right content and how we can help them how to reach the right audience, how we can engage the audience more, and how we can ensure the content is discovered in more places. And then at the end, is then to monetize it. And then the cycle work again from creating the right content, right? So in the context of digital, I think we all realize that the consumer, the way that consumer consume the content is so different, right? So it's very important for publishers to be able to understand like how content is being consumed on the media, digital media. And so what we are trying to help is to provide different kind of tools and resources to help our publishers to be able to understand how content is being consumed, particularly in the context of mobile. Because I think Asia is clearly leading in mobile. I think we always make a joke, right? So when Asia is today, US is still yesterday. So I think clearly, I think Asia is leading in mobile space, right? So that's why I think it's very important to, from Google perspective, we want to help the publisher to be able to providing the value across the whole selling cycle, from how creating content, reaching the audience, and so on and so forth.
So what stage do you come in to start working with these publishers? Is it you coming in really
Well, I think
early?
it very depends on the publisher. For example, like Mo, we have been working pretty closely. I think they are pretty advanced in terms of stage, like in terms of like going to mobile, going to digital, right?
Yeah.
So I think our collaboration with, for example, Lex Media is really across the board, not just monetization, but also in area like how we can create more innovation in the newsroom industry.
Okay. Maybe Mo, you can sort of expand on that a little bit, because having a digital presence is really just the beginning, right? It's not like, okay, we have a mobile service now, we're ready. It's really the beginning of such a long cycle about, you know, deeper engagement and you know, rethinking the way that content is done. You know, what's the circumstance been for you? You know, because you've had a bit of both from the print and now, you know, obviously the mobile and digital.
Right. I think it's the company directions. Not only, okay, I'm coming from a digital background, then you know the rest of the company, especially the editorial force, they are still in the traditional, you know, background. So the way they work, we have to, you know, we you know, the chairman and the ex-chairman and all the management's been actually setting a mandate, you know, telling them, okay, you guys have to adapt the way that how digital works work. So from the newsroom, the way they access the information, the way they produce it, there's a way that we follow the digital approach now. I mean, not like traditional way, you know, where they get the content and then they publish, and then we just you know, take those content and put it in the digital form. Not that way. Right now we think of a way that, you know, okay, we get those information, we treat it as digital first. You know, anything that we can maybe just chop it into several content or form, and then you know, print will be next.
Yeah.
You know, so it's the other way around.
But, I mean, if you had to kind of put, you know, a sort of a label on what does true digital transformation mean for a media company?
I would say, you know, I mean, from the bottom to the top, they're all within, you know,
Everyone thinks.
yeah. But right now, I mean, you know, having said that, you know, we changed our name, still a lot of the folks are still doing the old way.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah.
What about you? What would you think is true digital transformation?
Well, I think maybe I can illustrate like how we think about, I think, use the example like mobile.
Yeah.
So I think the way that we think about mobile is at the beginning of it, like back in several years ago, we always talk about think mobile, right? And then later on, we said no longer think mobile, we want to think mobile first, right? But now, we are always talking about think mobile only. So I think that implied like, I think it's a fundamental shift of the mindset, which translates into the vision of the company and then turn into the execution plan. So I think it's a fundamental shift of the mindset instead of like looking at mobile or digital being only part of the extension of the traditional print.
Okay, so Mo, maybe Henry as well. What are some of the challenges and opportunities for publishers as this shift to mobile really happens? I mean, is the new revenue opportunities as prominent as what you thought they were?
Yes, I mean to us it's really prominent because I can tell you that in terms of digital revenue, I think 80% of our digital revenue is belong to mobile. It's from mobile, and now today only 20% of our digital revenue is from web. And then our overall digital revenue is actually surpassed our print revenue. So that's how it's mobile.
And is it working, in partnership with the other print products that you're doing? Is it more about integration, or do people just want?
It would be more in the integrated form because now today you see the consumption of the print media. It's getting less, right? I mean, it's downtrending, but then I can see that the downtrend is actually slowing down these couple of years. I would say that the print media, in my opinion, right, it will be in times of certain age group.
Yeah.
Okay. And then those will be like the one who love your print or your content. They will buy it, okay? Those are the lovers with the habits, right? But then we have to develop some, it's like a pull strategy. You have to think of something that maybe can induce people to start using print again. Something that, print cannot be replaced. Something that we need to think of, print cannot be replaced. For that, so we have to plan some, with the integrated programs that, from digital and then driving people to use print.
Yeah. Okay, but maybe Nicola, we can kind of shift over to you for a bit because, I mean, on the content side of things, we've seen, how much time people are spending on their phones. You just have to take the MTR in the morning. And where do you see the next sort of development of mobile coming? If you can sort of talk about it from the client side and how you're working with media companies today and how that relationship has changed.
As mobile always puzzles me in Hong Kong. Everybody's on their mobile all the time, and it's one of the lowest spending ad spend mediums.
That's a really peculiar thing.
It's a global thing, right? You look over at the UK, in the States, the mobile consumption is a lot lower than what it is in Asia. I think Hong Kong, Korea, and another Asian country have got the highest penetration. And people just don't know what to do, right? So I started my career in digital in the UK, and then I went to Australia and I came here. And it's been the same trend since I can remember. Mobile's going to be the next big thing. Social's going to be the next big thing. And I think social's got there recently with all the new kind of platforms that have come on board, but everyone's still at a loss as to what to do on mobile. They don't really want to use the banner ads. You can't communicate much in a banner ad. So now what you found is publishers have taken the Facebook concept and they're putting ad units into the news feed. When you're scrolling down, advertisers the advertisers I work with aren't really interested in that. For a certain thing, for certain objectives, yes, if it drives sales, they will use that. But from a brand campaign, they don't want to use static images on a mobile. It doesn't do anything for the brand. So advertisers, they're looking more towards content that people can consume, but it's finding, Cathay ran a campaign recently. I'm not telling you anything, hopefully that any of you don't know. It's out there, and they've done a lot of content work, and we're still looking at the results. But what we're seeing is the consumption on mobile is huge, and the people who are consuming that content on mobile are then engaging with the brand side a lot more. Because, and again, it's to do with the audience, right? You've got to understand your audience of business travelers, so they're on their mobile constantly. They've got time, they're in airports, they're in taxis. So again, it all depends on the audience, I think. But yeah, content for me is definitely the way to go forward for a brand on mobile.
Yeah. And how have you found working with media, in particular, some of the sites? I know I said we weren't.
No, it's fine.
But I mean, is the
I'm smiling because of the question because all the publishers are here.
but working in this content space, I mean, it's such a hot topic. Everyone seems to be wanting to know how content marketing is going to work, and there's so many different forms of sponsored content, branded content, ad-funded content. I mean, is it the readership, are the numbers there? Is it working better than what?
The numbers are there on how much you want to invest, right? So if you want to put 1-2 million into traffic drivers to get that people to your content, which is generally what deals like that are, then you can get the numbers. I think that the question is at the minute, which everyone seems to be struggling with in the industry, is what content works and what content doesn't. And I think my view, I work at McCann, it's an integrated agency for Cathay. My view on what content should be, from global experience, the content that the creative agency think works compared to what the client will think will work is 3 different things. So it's trying to test and refine it and find out how to medium it. I'm very much of you don't want to shove the brand in the face, you want it very subtle. It needs to be truly native in the sense of, you write about a topic that is tying into the brand but also relevant for the consumer. And it's not flashing ads every time you go onto the page. But for the client, they still kind of want those flashing ads because they think, why would I spend all this money on content and not have my brand everywhere when people go to it? And then you've got the creative guys wanting to script the whole thing when you're trying to go, actually, the publishers should do it because the whole point of doing content is because they know their consumer better than what we do. So it's interesting trying to work with content.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, Mo, I know Next Digital has done quite a lot of this content marketing stuff, and some of it really well. I mean, the competitions to Australia and all this, it's all heavily driven by content and mobile, basically. Is this what you guys are really pushing at the moment?
Yeah, the content marketing, or what we call the native advertising, is something that we are actually focusing on since last year, and we're still focusing on that because content marketing or native advertising is something that the client really wants these days. They don't want to have some normal, just simple flashy banner or even video. So we actually we go further. We produce content based on our editorial kind of style because our editorial has their style before the content. So we actually have a special task force sit within the editorial circle. They know how they write, so they produce a conversion piece which really resemble our way of style. Okay, and then we actually go further. We do not just produce text and image. We produce video.
Yeah.
So pretty much 90% of our sponsored content on native advertising are all in the video form these days. Yeah. So basically, you really cannot tell it until someone who are smart enough they can tell, oh, this is actually the content.
And how open are you about whether it's advertising content or not?
We really want to be true with our audience. Sometimes we actually go ahead and tell them, okay, this is brought to you by the brand. So that they won't feel that, okay, I'm betrayed, I'm being tricked into doing that. But then, a lot of time we actually, get good feedback because, audience do read it, okay? They do read our content, the video, and the result is, we see that, right? I mean, every day we have the result on our video content, for example, like in Netflix will be, 150K video view, that's normal for clips. And the same kind of clip we view about 150, sometimes to 200. So I mean that's I think they don't hate it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And I mean sort of similar on this theme, right? What's your perspective on how people are consuming news content now? Because I know Apple Daily's done some of the 360 video stuff, and it's just very cool. And I know there's been I think some Washington Post where they're doing like these live kind of 360 degrees interviews, and it's really interactive stuff where you can scroll around with your and look at everything. I mean, how do you see audiences really ready to jump into this stuff as much as maybe some of the publishers would like to push in? I mean, is the
I think particularly in the mobile space, I think the way that a consumer consume the content is so different. I think we can look at like from how they access the content and when they access the content and what kind of content they are interested in from that free perspective. I think in terms of how you can see, like particularly for the news content, based on our study, we found out like more than 50% of the user actually really use the news app. So they want to directly interact with the news publishers, right? But at the same time, search still remains a very main source of how the information or news being found by the users, right? On the other hand, social and messaging apps are also the media where the gateway where like people get access to the news content. So you like it or not. So right now, people are still spending a lot of time on social and messaging apps, right? For example, in APAC, a lot of the country where we have seen that people are spending more than an hour a day. In some of the emerging markets, even spend more than 2 hours, right? So none of the news app today be able to even achieve half of the time spent, right? So I think from a publisher perspective, I think we need to be more open to look at to really fish where the fish are. So I think we need to look at how we can maximize the impact of all these different gateways to enable the content being found by the users, right? In terms of when the user is going to engage, if you look at I think it's not over as exaggerated to say Asian or people in Asia really live and breathe with smartphone. Okay, imagine people in Asia actually spend more than 150 times a day using the phone, right? These are the moment sometimes just looking at the watch, checking the time, checking out where the people, my friends are up to. But all these little action actually really matters to users, right? These are the moments where people want to think, decide what to buy, what to find out, what I want to learn, and things like that. So these are the moments, what we call the micro moments, are the moments that really change the people making a decision and shape their preferences, right? So I think it's very important for a publisher to realize how important these micro moments are, because these are the micro moments that only happen on the mobile. And I think that will imply from a news publisher perspective, how we can make sure the information that we deliver to the user are the immediate information and also it's highly relevant to the users, right? And in terms of what kind of content, we started to see a lot more content, it's getting more popular in terms of the niche content. So I think YouTube is a very good example. We see a lot of our creators on YouTube actually producing a lot of niche content and getting very, very popular. Some of the good examples, for example, I'm not so sure whether you heard about Chuchu TV. Chuchu TV is one of the most popular channel on YouTube. So this is the founder of it actually inspired by her daughter, who really loved the nursery rhyme. Okay.
You want to know?
Okay. So it's just created by creating for children entertainment, but it already attract more than 3 billion views, right? And more than 2.5 billion users, right? So
it's extraordinary,
it's extraordinary, right? And also there's a channel called Kids Toys, where it's created by 2 girls, and in a small village of Philippines, right? Just share the moment that they open unboxing the toys, how happy they are with the toys, and when they experience that playing with the new toys, right? Attract more than 1 billion views, right? So I think these are all the examples the niche, how niche content really get the popular attention from the users, right? So in the context of news publishers, of course, I think it's somewhat different, but we also see very interesting niche content. For example, with one of the examples, there's a very famous Vietnamese rapper. So now he's not living in Vietnam, but he's living in the States. So he can learn more about what is going on in Vietnam and see the other side of the story, right? So how he does this is create a channel. So basically to update the news and wrap the news, right? Using the web and wrap the news to the audience, and it really attract a lot of audience. And he also have a very strong opinion about strong view about what is going on in Vietnam, right? So I think, of course, I'm not suggesting that you guys to wrap the news, right? If you do similar content, but I think the point that I'm trying to so the point that I'm trying to make is that I think the niche content is something that we see is being successful, getting a lot of traction in the mobile space.
I mean, that really kind of plays into what you were mentioning before about if advertisers are creating their own content, they have the ability to create these kind of micro moments, and then you can program them at special times of the day for Facebook when people are Are you doing seeing smaller, pieces of content being released, at typical sort of times?
I would like to.
Yeah.
To do that, you need to understand the consumer. And one of the things I've found, not just necessarily working for Cathay, but working for brands in Hong Kong or Asia, I mean, the brands I've worked on are global, so you would expect them to know better, but is a lack of understanding of the consumer. When my team puts together the decks, they're not focused on the consumer, they're focused on channels, and I think marketing's moved away from that now. We're not on channels anymore. There's so many channels. The consumer pathway is not linear anymore. They're in and out of different touch points. And you need to have a basic understanding of the consumer, what they like, small, snaps of content and what they're consuming, what touch points, watches, and on their mobile phones, what they're doing. They're consuming news in the morning, so tying it into that rather than continuously running ads throughout the day, targeting channels and contextually. And I think that kind of will probably go into it, but that's what programmatic gives you, right?
Yeah, well, I was
programmatic shifts it. Programmatic shifts away from this channel-centric advertising into a more audience or consumer targeting, and trying to explain that to an advertiser is incredibly difficult.
As maybe we could just talk about it now, because we were going to talk about the programmatic and how data is driving a lot of this information. Is that bringing more knowledge about people's behaviour and how they're surfing online?
It's probably bringing too much data. For now, if I look at the data we received from our last campaign, it's just ridiculous.
Just give us an idea of what that, how big and what it looks like.
Yeah, you're looking at so much, right? And it's trying to understand right from day one what you're doing, what your objectives are, what your KPIs are. Because if you don't, then you're going to get to the end of a campaign, you're going to have all this data and not really know what you're looking at. I always describe it as going down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
If you don't know what you're looking for, you can spend days getting lost in that data. People are still looking at impressions and click-through rate. I hate that. I hate it when publishers come in and go, oh, we've got a really good click-through rate on mobile. Well, you will. Most people do. It's nothing new. What is happening when I take the user to the site? What's the branding impact of that? And a lot of people don't look at that. They really don't look at that.
Wasn't that the promise of programmatic advertising and data, that this stuff was available in real time, so you could tweak your campaigns?
It's finding people that can do that.
Right.
Even on the publisher side, a lot of times, I'll ask a publisher, so how is it working? What insights have you got? And they send me a report with impressions, clicks, and click-through rates. And I'm like, well, I've got that.
Yes.
I'm tracking it too. What I want to know is insights from your side. Why is that receiving a higher click-through rate? What audience is there that you think is responding to the creative in that way? And it's a partnership, right? And I think what you find a lot in Hong Kong is publishers from a traditional mindset. It's great that you guys are very next digital, but so a traditional mindset where they're just used to delivering numbers. This is a circulation number, or this is the reach number on TV. This is what it delivered. And digital's a lot more than that. It needs the resource, and a lot of times you don't have the resource or the expertise on agency side or publisher side or even client side sometimes.
Yeah, I've heard the term a couple of times. I really dislike marketing jargon, but people have been saying it's a return on engagement rather than your investment. But how the hell do you measure that sort of stuff?
You've got to define your engagement, right? Yeah. Some people will call a click an engagement. I don't. Less than 1% of people click on ads. So why we're still looking at clicks, I don't know. Yeah, I really don't.
Maybe Mo, can we pick your brain about this, because there's that you guys have made a statement and changed the company to next digital. So what does that mean?
Yeah, I think
looking at all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, in our digital platform, I think at least I told my team to up their efforts, not to do just plain old selling on the banners and the video and even the native content with it. We are actually since last year we already work with DMP's digital media platform. Basically, it's a platform that when we work with them, we know our traffic behavior. We know what our audience is spending time on, what sections then we can build a business rule, business policy, and to come up with different segments. So we've been actually doing a year on that. We've been actually selling the audience profile, to clients. So yeah, we just don't do plain just normal selling. We are now moving into selling the audience.
Yeah.
And even so, we actually are working with the other partners in overseas to do the audience extensions. So for example, people we can outreach, but we know that our people actually reaching the other side.
Yeah, right.
That we know that that's one of ours. We can still monetize that. So yeah.
And does it include everything? So you're selling, Facebook and selling all sort of.
Yeah, we work with them. We have a network with them. Yes. Yeah.
And so as this, the next digital thing sort of starts to settle in, what's it going to mean in real terms? Like, will there be a scaling back in print products?
Careful.
No, okay. So ultimately, it's the management decisions, right?
Yeah.
But then, it will be.
What's your gut feeling?
Well, it will be on the, on return on the investment. What's the most beneficial to the company in terms of revenues and growth.
Yeah.
So I can say that they will work toward that goal. That in what way?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll leave you alone on that one. Now we're kind of time's flying, right? But I thought maybe we can talk about some of the tools that are coming around. I mean, we were in here last week and we were looking at how, especially for some, there was a couple of examples where there had been an earthquake somewhere, and people were tapping into Google Maps to get before and after pictures and things like that, and even using some of the e-commerce tools which you guys can provide, and really integrating that into the newsroom, and so a story about fashion could also become a story, which then they could go and buy the product. And so there's this monetization of the content, which is bringing a new level. What gets you excited when you see some of this stuff now?
Yeah, I think talking about tools that we have, actually I think the tool, particularly you mentioned about our news lab, is only part of the effort that we are doing to help the publishers, particularly for news publishers. We are doing different things, driving that as part of the news lab is basically a training and resources that we can offer to the publishers to basically help them to in a couple of areas in terms of doing the research, help them to create the content, help them to do the reporting. That is the tool that we offer that basically help to enhance the reporting with a much stronger visualization tools, right? And we also help them to distribute through the different distribution tools that are available on Google, and also optimize the performance with engaging the users, right? So in some of the example, like for research, like we have Google search for sure, right? Scholar search, Google trend. So basically looking at trend, and also we have the data explorer, right? And in terms of reporting, we have different tools like the maps, Google Earth, crisis map that you just mentioned, YouTube, and version table that can help you to visualize and big data that can visualize it and enhance the reporting, right? And distribution, we have the different kind of the newsstand, print newsstand, Google News, search, YouTube as a way that for you to distribute your content, right? So these are the tools that fall under the news lab, and we are more than happy to. In fact, I think that you mentioned we have already conducted training. We have the first event here in May in Seoul, and we also conducted training in different countries in the APAC. We would love to continue to do that effort to provide more training and to introduce all the resources that are available. But apart from all the tools that we have, actually we also work on the number of things like we just mentioned. Ray mentioned about the hackathon that we are going to have. We want to support the innovation, respond to the event. We want to make sure that we continue to drive the innovation, right? And we also have an education program, we work with the Content U on launching some of the online training courses, that basically to provide training to all the journalists and also the editors to enhance their digital skill. And these are all the things that we're working on to help in this space.
So you're kind of targeting the newsroom, and then we'll then help publishers go and back it up.
Yeah.
Say how they can get all the data and the engagement from it as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
What about for you, Bo? How's all some of these things that you're doing? Are they working? Are audiences responding to it?
mean,
Like the 360 video stuff?
oh, yeah, I was just talking to Henry and Jason. You know, one of our business units, we produce a lot of the animations, mixed media animations. So since we produce those animations, we can easily transcode them into the 3D content. And then for our editorial team, we do already engage with the 360 shootings. We bought those little Rico.
Yeah, I love those things.
But then we recently, I think they're moving into buying those 360 GoPro, gears, so that we will, when there is something, dramatic happens, an accident or whatsoever, they can have the crew go out there. We think it's feasible. They do that. And actually, Taiwan Apple they actually produce this kind of content once a day. So they're pretty faster than normal days.
Yeah.
But so we are already into that, and since next year is going to be the year of VR, the Oculus is coming out, HTC, Microsoft, and Google are going the mass distributions. So we want to ride on that hype and start to tell our audience that this is a new way to ingest content, even a new way to look at news.
Yeah. I was just watching the Shangri-La has been doing their own Oculus stuff, and they're creating so much content with these guys, and it's almost like, to ride without a newsroom, it's really crazy how much stuff they're putting out. I mean, Nicola, do you see advertisers really embracing this sort of stuff? And no?
Not the ones I've seen. I think the ones I've seen are still trying to master display advertising. Into virtual reality. So I think a few brands are away off that. I think the publishers are trying to lead it. But the advertisers, I think, are away off using it from an advertising point of view.
So what's the big sort of areas are still things like search and social like this and stuff like that?
Yeah, search social mobile. I get asked to put together trend documents every year, and it's the same thing. Search social mobile. Anything that's relevant, I could present virtual reality, but it's not relevant for the client because maybe internally, I don't know what their plans are. Maybe they're looking at it from a lounge point of view. There was a report from Swift, which is a travel site, that did virtual reality and how people will travel like that in the future. I don't know. I think that's quite sad. I hope that doesn't happen in my lifetime, where people are actually traveling by virtual reality and not actually experiencing the places. I mean, it could happen, right? You don't know. In 100 years, we might not be flying anywhere anymore.
Maybe can we throw it out for a little while and see if there's any questions in the audience?
I was just wondering about the impact of ad blockers. I mean, you laugh. I mean, how do you get around that?
It's content. That's one of the things that's going to drive content is ad blockers. And on my mobile, I work in advertising and with ads on my mobile. It's such a personal space. And the ads aren't relevant. I hope programmatic will change it as well. I think as ads become more relevant, people won't mind being targeted by them. But on Facebook is one of the most targeted sites. I get targeted by Pampers. I'm not married, I'm not engaged, I don't have children. I don't even refer to children on my Facebook page. Actually, my nephew, maybe that's why. Just thinking about it, I post a lot about my nephew. There we go. But it's relevant. If you make something relevant and personal, people don't mind getting targeted. But then it's a fine line between spamming, right? Agoda and Booking.com, I'm sure we've all experienced, are a nightmare for it. After I booked my hotel, 2 weeks later I'm still being targeted by them. It's like they don't even know the basic principle of retargeting. They haven't actually gone and booked. It's quite frustrating. I think ad blockers would be interesting. I think advertisers are ignoring it. I think publishers are ignoring it. I do think it's coming. I think the new generation, the next generation, millennials, I think they're going to stop blocking things because advertising isn't relevant to them. They're not. I try a lot of times with Cathay explaining. Cathay's very focused on an older consumer. But millennials are their future target, right? And millennials have got an attention span of a second, and if you don't capture them, you know, I shouldn't take my creative agency off, but I'm going to. You know, creative agencies are still very stuck in the frames tell a story, and creatives do genuinely believe that consumers will sit there and watch the frames go through and tell a story and watch it right until you get to the end. It's like they don't. You know, you've got a second to capture someone's attention, and if you fail to evolve and figure what that is, then ad blockers are going to really become on the rise. You know. Apple are a leader, right?
Yes.
They know, they've got a crystal ball, they kind of see into the future, but they're putting it on their phones, they're allowing it on their phones, so they must, they've also got a plan in terms of something, make revenue out of it. But yeah, I think people need to be aware of it, advertisers and brands.
How do you see it? I mean, if the future is, you know, it's all about money.
Well, I think to us, let's look at the ad blocker thing. I think currently ad blocker is only blocking on Safari base, browser base. But in Hong Kong and in Taiwan, I think our mobile apps are native app. Okay, native app are different from mobile web. They can do the blocking on mobile web easy, okay, but they cannot do a really easy job at blocking native applications. Okay, and for using people who use ad blockers, I think the game side has as hard as 25% of ad blocking in our engagement. But then for news side, I think I don't see that it's really a dramatic problem. And then, you know, first I mentioned is, you know, since we are heavily on the native applications, so this ad blocker thing is not gonna really put it down to us.
Yeah.
And currently, the ad blocker thing is only happening on the PC level. Yeah.
Or maybe I can add on that. I think we need to understand like why ad blocking happen, right? So I think it's actually it's a symptom of like bad ad experience, right? I can imagine like a user, I myself as a user have a bad experience with ad, right? On the content that I'm looking at either through PC or mobile, right? So I can imagine one have enough bad experience with ad, we want to have a choice to get over the ad, right? So, but the problem is for today, so I think most of the ad blockers they're blocking all the ads, right? So, what does that mean, right? I think the problem is they're also blocking the opportunity for users to be able to get access to learn something new, right? Some new product or get access to information that's relevant to them, right? And on the other hand, for the creator, they are not being get the pay for the content that they create, right? So basically, it's impacting the ecosystem. So I think overall, I think it's really our responsibility as the industry player to protect, to make sure that we deliver the good ad experience to users, to make sure the healthy ecosystem of the ecosystem. So I think there's a couple of things, I think there's a lot of things that we do. I think from us, I think we are a strong believer about the open web. And we want to make sure like a healthy ecosystem is where content creators get paid for the content that they create. So I think, so how are we going to do that? So I think these are something that I think as the player in the industry, we need to collectively work together how to make sure that we can always ensure the best user experience the best ad experience to the users.
And what is that sharing the data that you have about what people are doing online, or maybe what's?
I don't really have the number on top of my head, but I do think like this is something that I think collectively we need to work together to adjust that. Yeah, particularly in the context of mobile.
So Nicole, you mentioned the challenge with millennials and things like that, and then it sort of goes back to what Henry was saying, that how people are consuming a lot of information that was built around personalities like these PewDiePies and all these sort of guys online who just have millions and millions of followers. I mean, this is a real challenge for media companies, in the future, right? About how they start engaging consumers now in the right way. It's a massive challenge.
I don't think so. I think human beings are quite simple. I think as advertisers we probably overcomplicate it. For me, I've always maybe it's because I've been trained in digital, but I've always believed if you give something of value to the consumer, they're more likely to engage, you know, so I'm always trying to push to deliver more than just a leaderboard and an MREC. You know, what can we do in that leaderboard and MREC, or what message can we put in there that will drive them to a destination to give them something they're interested in? You know, I think advertisers a lot of times, or brands, they're very inward looking, and they genuinely believe that people care about their brands, and people don't, you know, and people care about themselves. You know, we're very selfish, we want to be entertained, and we're very time poor at the minute. You know, a huge thing, and I see it in Hong Kong, is, and I've read a few articles on it, is this whole trading of time, you know, and how people are doing things that give them time, like, you know, having their food delivered and everything, anything that buys them more time so that they have time to spend on experiences or whatever it is. And, you know, it's tapping into that. Again, with a digital training, I've always been trained, like, particularly for mobile. Everybody wants to build a mobile app, right? Everybody. It's like, mobile apps have the shelf life of 30 to 90 days, if you're lucky. The trick to doing a mobile app is making it useful to someone. You know, what value is it going to bring to them on a daily basis that they would actually go out of their way to engage with you as a brand? And I think that's what brands still in this day and age, you know, some brands that get it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of some that do. Off the top of my head, I'm not quite sure, but
Well,
a lot of brands
do you mean things like, okay, so there was an app that we saw just recently for Levi's where they were trying to become part of the homepage, the locking experience, where it was based around weather. So if it was cool roll out news today, then they were showing different products and things like that. So it's more contextual.
But they're still shoving their products in the consumer face, you know. I think, like, Virgin Airlines do a really good job of just, and this is where content comes in, right? If you give content to the consumer that they're interested in, that is of value. Like, some of the publishers came back with the ideas of jet lag. It's like, that's not interesting. We all know what jet lag is, right? I mean, it's really not interesting content. What is interesting to the business people? You know, some of the content that goes to the BBC and the CNN that we've done, the BBC, we've got some really interesting content around the scientific approach and how it ties into the life or travel concept for cafe. And it's finding those little nuggets that are interesting to the consumer without going, oh, by the way, buy a business class seat while you're here. Because, you know, consumers, there's many factors to consider, you know, playing into a consumer's decision. Price, from an airline, price, non-stop flights, everything. And you've just got to try and be there at different touch points, giving them something that is of interest to them, so that when they do go to book, that your brand is top of mind, because they're like, oh yeah, cafe. Yeah. Display ads, I don't do that.
Yeah. What about from the publisher's perspective? I mean, how much time do you guys spend on trying to engage younger people and you know, things like video are a good part of that?
Yeah, I think video is a very big part of that. That's why we every day we push out at least 45 video clips a day.
45 a day?
Yeah, and then we 10% of the animations. And then we post constantly on our Facebook fan page. You know, hoping that, and also we do a lot of real-time news, right?
Yep.
It's a little thing that keep, you know, audience from coming. So I'd say, yeah, video, real-time news, it's you know, two of the things that we're really pushing.
Yeah.
Just on that, sorry, for those that haven't seen, speaking about engagement, for those that haven't seen it, there's a supermarket called Sainsbury's from the UK, and they released their Christmas video a few weeks ago. I think it's just over 20 million views now. Have a look at it. It's an animated film, storytelling. The product doesn't appear anywhere in this film. It's a 3.5-minute film, and at the end, it's just the brand Sainsbury's. I mean, that for me is storytelling at its best, and how you really engage with consumers. I've watched it 4 times. Yeah. I'm not going to buy because I'm not in the country, right? But still, Sainsbury's, being from the UK, Sainsbury's is a brand that I do resonate with, and if I ever move back there, I'm not saying that accurately, but it is. It's not shoving the product down people's throats. It's just, hey, it's Christmas, we want to give something back kind of thing. So check it out, it's really good. It's a brilliant storytelling piece.
I guess on that note, you know, we spend so much time with advertisers having us ask about the return on investment. like every day we have that conversation. And so to hear you talk about the video that potentially has no measurable return on investment, how do you have that conversation?
I think it will have a return on investment. How you measure that is a different story. There's a lot of econometrics modelling that would need to go into that to look at sales over the Christmas period compared to the year before, looking at store traffic. So when I worked with Puma, they were, before this role, they were heavy into that. So they would look at the brand campaigns that they ran, and then they would look at store traffic into their stores, but then also partner stores, and the sales of that, and they would do a whole econometrics modelling piece. So some brands are smarter at doing it. At the minute, you know, with Cathay, they, as you can imagine as an airline, they're very focused on return on investment. But branding campaigns the branding campaigns aren't measured in sales, it's more brand love. So it's trying to get them to think that way. But yeah, it can be done, econometrics, but that's the brand side, it's not the publisher side or the agency side. That really does require a lot of input and investment from the brands, which they're not prepared to invest in. They just want you to tell them what is delivered, and it's not, that's definitely an advertiser piece of work.
So that they're not willing to invest in
Well, most of the advertisers I've worked with, they've got their kind of online tracking, and this is why they get fixated on the click, right? You get fixated on it because you can go, this is the number of clicks, but I always say, but what does that tell us? You've got 300,000 people, for example, to a campaign site, but they could be your customers, or they're going to book anyway. Therefore, the money you've invested in a campaign is delivered zero return on investment because your current customers are going there. You know, have you reached any new customers? So yeah, I mean, not many brands do. Wow, I was at a media conference in Rome in February, and I was speaking to McCain, which is a big global frozen foods. Yeah. And even she was saying internally they're really bad at it. You know, they don't know what's being delivered. They've just started to implement brand tracking this year, and I'm still surprised in this day and age that the advertisers that don't have a brand tracking in place to understand what consumers' perception is of their brands and model and base their marketing on that moving forward. It's astounding.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we haven't even talked about the role of public relations and stuff and all this, because I would think that would be quite critical and key in a lot of these guys that are setting up real-time newsrooms in their own offices and tracking and monitoring all this type of stuff, activity that's going on. So, yeah, I mean, we've got to probably need 15 minutes for the. Okay. So, I guess if we can try and wrap it up a little bit. I mean, do we have any questions? Yeah, sure.
When Steve Jobs launched the iPad, he famously did that, he said, for publishers. And as we're talking about mobile advertising, we talk about phone, we talk about mobile, but what consideration do you give to tablet distribution of content information? Henry talked about having a full advertiser experience. Do you consider tablets in regards to phones? Do you really not consider the tablets anymore? Last week I heard that Hong Kong has 88% ownership of tablets, the largest market consumption in the world. Can we just talk about that for a second?
These new phones are fabulous anyway, aren't they?
Exactly.
It's huge.
Yeah, I think we can look at it from a different perspective, right? I think tablet somehow it has to be the most dominant device that people use most of the time, apart from desktop and mobile, right? It's somewhat in between. Even internally, sometimes we are struggling on recall tablet as part of mobile or what. But I think at the end, the question is really on how we can make sure what we so-called multi-screen experience, right? I think for a lot of the news publishers that we see in the world, actually, when they look at it, mobile is, as part of the mobile, what it means to them is how we can create content that can fit into the multi-screen. For example, we have been working with one of the top news publishers in Japan, right? Japan Times, right? So what they did is they decided to go, particularly in Japan, people are spending a lot of time on TV screen, on tablet, on mobile, on desktop, right? So mobile definitely is the major part of the time that people spend most of the time on. But the multi-screen is very important for them too. So what they did is they just went multi-screen. Just we designed the whole web, for example, like you're saying, what they so-called the RWD, responsive web design, to basically help to create content that can fit into whatever screen that you have. So I think what it means is, I think we need to think about like how we can structure the way that we create content and how we can build the infrastructure. Not only just customize for one particular screen, but potentially be able to capitalize all the opportunity across the different screens. So like Japan Times, when they did it, they are able to drive like, if I remember correctly, something like they can drive 80% more in terms of traffic because they fit into the different screen, and also they acquire more than 50% of the unique users because they do this kind of initiative. So I think one way to look at it is really, why just mobile phone? Right? Why just tablet? Why just desktop? Why can't you have a strategy that works across different multi-screen? Yeah. And part of it, I think, from an advertising perspective, and that's why I think programmatic buying, advertising is so important, because imagine if you have to do a manual inventory booking, ordering processing for different screens, it's going to be a nightmare, right? And it's hard for advertisers to reach the audience at scale, right? So what programmatic can bring is really how to do all this manual work and do it automatically at the back end, right? Not the programmatic system to do the back end, to do all these kind of things, and that's the market here to focus on the strategies. So I think that's how I look at it.
You want to have a crack at that one, right? You guys are building content. Or
Yeah, okay, on that front, we also have a version for tablets as well. The version for tablet will be, first of all, we build responsive web. Okay, so when you log into the web, if you do not have the app download, you look at the responsive web on the tablet, it will be just fit with the form factors. And then if you download the app, we do have a specific versions for tablets. What is different is that the pictures and the video will be in the high definitions. Because we figured when the time you use tablet, right, it will be most of the time either at night or in the free time. And the rest of the time you usually use a tablet or PC. So when you can sit down and enjoy using the tablet, we figured we have to fit them with more premium, better qualities of information. And we do know that actually tablet user, let's say, are more high affluent with higher disposable incomes too. So that part we're trying to crack open. We're still trying to think of a way how we can specifically target that. Yeah, that's what we do.
From an advertiser's point of view, I think that I mean, we're going through a stage now where we are booking individual device inventory, which is very painful for publishers and buyers, but it needs to be done because we need to test it. What I've seen on previous, and the results are still coming in for Cathay, but previous brands have shown, and this will evolve and change, but people, the cross-channel comes into it from programmatic, playing into the different devices, but people do not want to book on mobile, despite, or buy on mobile, despite what advertisers think. I think it's coming, but people generally will kind of browse on their mobile and then go and book or make it buy something on their iPad or the desktop. But with some of the stats you see in the industry are that people are using their iPad more for engagement and more like to sit on the leisure time that they're in bed and stuff, whereas the mobile seems to be on the go.
Okay, cool. So as we kind of wrap it up, I mean, Nicole, do you want to have the start? If there's something in the next, say, year or two, I mean, that you would like to see change in the industry, what would that look like?
Specifically in Hong Kong?
I mean,
specifically in Hong Kong, I'd like to see publishers stop pushing print so much, and because they're scared, right? It's like being in back in the UK 5-6 years ago. People are scared, and they just need to understand their revenues are just shifting. Revenues are shifting to an iPad edition, and they need to be smarter about that. But that comes from the top. It sounds like you're very lucky. You've got a senior management team who very much believe in digital, but some senior management teams don't. They still genuinely believe that print is going to stick around for another 10, 20 years without looking, again, an example of of people not looking at the consumer behaviour, rather focusing inward about what is best for their company. And that's not just publishers, that's brands as well. So I'd like to see really some innovation from publishers around the digital space and the mobile space and really driving that in the industry, because you guys are in a really powerful position because the agencies don't have the expertise. So they bring a lot of overseas people in. You guys know your Hong Kong consumer, you know your product, and really it's about pushing that and being more innovative with it because clients are starting to demand it. So anyone that doesn't start delivering that is going to kind of be left behind because they will go to, advertisers will go to publishers that are giving them those opportunities. And I'd like to see more consumer focused.
Yeah.
Can I just jump in there? We produce luxury magazines, and we just ran a survey of one of our luxury magazines with readers in Singapore. And the feedback from readers who were responding both on digital and on print was 70% of our readers wanted to read the magazine in print, 30% digital, and that was across all digital platforms.
What's your demographic?
It's high-end luxury readers.
With your age? What's your age?
Oh, age range.
Around 30 plus?
30
Around
plus.
30 plus. Yeah, so I mean, I'm not, you know, in Asia what you'll see, for example, the Financial Times, right? Is anyone from that? I'm not I'm not going to say anything bad, don't worry. The Financial Times, when we do a global campaign in the UK, we do digital because the consumers there, we can reach a higher percentage of our consumer, business traveller in digital. In Asia, it's still very much print. We can think it's something like 11% digital, we can reach 11% of our audience on digital in FT compared to 25%. You know, and it's the different age demographics, and I think that will change. But I still go on holiday and want to read a book. Yeah, I hate having books in e-readers. I don't use magazines or print. That's just because I ignore the news because I live in a Hong Kong bubble and try to move away from everything that's going on in the world. But yeah, there's still that demographic, and you know, there is always going to be that demographic. But I think focusing brands more and more are focusing on millennials, and millennials are consuming media differently. And I think if you ignore that, then you're ignoring your future consumer.
Would you also think that maybe it's because it's the luxury industry and the magazines, they're very nice, and you know, is there still a role for more niche sort of content rather than, you know, okay, so traditional publishing, you know, audiences are kind of dwindling away, but for more niche and really targeted things like these magazines, there's still a need and a want for that sort of stuff.
For that age group, yes. Yeah. You are still going to get your people with that want to just like consuming the magazines, you know. But all of my, most of the creative guys, they love the magazines, they love the Monocle, which is a design magazine, they just love the look and feel of it. But then they're also in a traditional mindset. They have worked with print their whole life and film their whole life, so they're very focused on that. I'm not saying print is going anywhere, and I don't want that to go out of this, because I'm definitely not. Print still plays a very strong role, and even though my digital background, well, even though my background is digital, you know, my planning for Cafe is very holistic. It is TV, print, out of home, and digital. I'm saying though, as we evolve as an industry, anyone that ignores digital and the millennial consumer will suffer. And be that in 10, 20 years, if you don't evolve, I've seen it in the UK, you'll go out of business, pretty much.
Yeah, but you talk about also, sorry, just as an add-on.
Sure.
You talk about the brand, and it being about branding. And one of the things that a magazine can do, you can produce a beautiful magazine. But if you're on the mobile app, it's always, your interaction is always with mobile. So it's not the same branding experience for the very high-end brands.
I would disagree, because a lot of advertisers use the same print ad within a app.
Yeah, but it's not the same experience of having beautiful paper.
It's that's subjective. It depends on the person that's looking at it. To a millennial, you know, they might look at a magazine and go, "That's really ugly." You know, this is really cool. It depends on your audience. It really does, and that's my point. There are so many different consumers and so many different types or different ways of consuming media that if you don't understand them all, that's where the problem comes. You can't just focus on. I always like to say meeting sample size of one. You know, a lot of people will say, oh, I think we should do this, and it's like, why? Oh, well, because I still read newspapers, you know, or I consume apps, I consume that app, so we should run in there. I just think you've got to be, as marketeers, we've got to be aware of the whole landscape. And I think, yeah, otherwise, if you're not, then...
What about for next digital? Is that message coming through? You guys have made a big step and made the change. I mean, do you now go and embrace more disruption and really rethink what you do?
Yeah, okay, one thing I would believe in, I think it's that our management, now that they've already changed the name, so I will believe that they still give us liberties on exploring different kind of idea. Currently, I mean, if you ask me what's going in the next 5 or 10 years, I really don't know. I mean, right now we're doing pretty good on mobile and video. Next year we're betting on VR. And what's next? I don't know. But we're betting on our management to give us a chance to explore the way we can. Our ex-chairman, you know, he's pretty visionary.
Yes.
You know, because we formed the mobile units 3.5 years ago, when everybody is still on the PC. And we had our first, you know, video news coming in, you know, 6 years ago, when nobody thinks that video news is going to take off. So, you know, I mean, it's the kind of you know, style that lead us to you know, innovate. So, as long as the management give us a chance to look into different kind of ways, we will just explore. I really don't know what's next.
But you make a really good point. Maybe Henry, you could kind of finish on this. Is that the key, to be exploratory and open to new ways of doing business?
Well, I think the challenge for going to mobile is really, as Mo said, right? It's really hard to foresee like what news is going to be in 2 to 3 years from now. Okay. The reason I said that is because, like, think about when people start talking about mobile, we already have like all these like wearables, like all these like auto, like connected car, right? So imagine in the future we're already talking about like device that is not only just mobile, tablet, and PC, but now we're talking about watch, wearable, and like drive the car. You have like connected car that somehow you guys see. So I think I'm not trying to complicate the problem that we're facing now, but I just think a lot of times I think as the industry player, we need to always think, when we think about mobile, always think about actually there's something even beyond happening. So how we can look even further and equip ourselves better in a way to face the challenge that we are going to face in the future. And I also want to echo to Nicole's comment about like what I want to see in 2 years from now, particularly in the concept of Hong Kong. I really want to see like less print and more digital content, not only from a digital ecosystem perspective, but also from a environmental potential perspective, like, for a healthier ecosystem. So.
I think we're right on time,
Yes.
Christine.
Yes, so
So
thank you.
thank you guys. That was a great conversation. I hope you guys